Welcome to Pandora's Awareness Podcast, a place where we collect stories and circulate life-changing wisdom. I'm your host, Asher, and our guest today is Brenna. And you're here because we get to talk about fear, which is the theme of our conversation on Wednesday. And Brenna, if you don't mind telling us where you're hailing from, what you specialize in, how you adding value to the world, and who you're being a hero to.
Yes, absolutely, Asher. I'm so excited to be here and talk about fears, which is one thing I thought I would never say.
Hmm.
I currently live in North Carolina, and I am a mindset and business coach for heart-led creatives and entrepreneurs. The way that I love adding value in the world and to people is just reminding people who they really are at the core and
Hmm.
then working from the inside out, because in a world where we consume so much, that inner piece of us, the most important piece, it's so easy to get out of touch with. And as artists and as creatives and as entrepreneurs, the way that we are going to provide the most value to the world is by doing what's most authentic to us. So I help people peel off the layers from that. And it doesn't matter whether you're in it to create a business or create some different kind of art, visual art, creative art, whatever it may be. But uncovering that piece and helping people be the most expressed version of them is my absolute favorite way to add value. And the person that I am a hero to
Hmm.
is the person who feels like they're in a place where they have so much to give, but there's so many people telling them the right way to do it.
Hmm.
I love to come in and grab that person by the hand and say, we're going to do this together and we're going to find your way, and we're going to work together until you find that way and find confidence in your own way while shutting out all of the noise, because there are consumers and there are creators. And there's a time to consume and there's a time to create. And when people feel the calling to create, that's when the consuming has to go to the wayside. And that's a really hard thing to do. So those are the people that I love to be a hero to.
Wow. Brenna, you got me vibrating really good there, my friend. And when you was talking, you know what pops in my head?
Tell me.
It, the coaching piece of life. You know, oftentimes when we are coaching people or we're trying to encourage people along the way and for them to transform into a new version of themselves or the person that they really want to like peel out. You were talking about peel back and go back to. And what happens is we don't realize that the coaching is not for the person you are right now. It's the person after you transform because that becomes a new identity. The identity feels like a baby. It's a
Mm-hmm.
newborn, and you
Yes.
got to coach that new version of yourself back into the person that you want to be confident about. Because we don't recognize that when you switch identity, you become very vulnerable.
Very.
And then you feel like an imposter because the new version that you transform into, you're like, oh my God, I'm not sure about it.
Yeah.
And that's the version that needs the coaching, not the person that you've met the first time, the person that gets transformed. And oftentimes we miss that piece because we're like, okay, I'm a coach this person. No, you need to coach the person they become because that
Mm-hmm.
person is not sure yet. That
Mm-hmm.
version is not sure yet. That version is afraid, is feel too vulnerable. And you got to figure out how do I nurture that new identity into life. And that's why you need community. You need somebody to look at you and like, hey, that new birth person, that person you just birthed, I'm here to support that person to become confident too. That's what I
Yeah.
was thinking about when you was just laying out your stuff just now.
I've never heard someone put it into words like you just have. And that's so beautiful. And it's so true. Because one thing that I coach and mentor and teach a lot about is like finding safety in the unknown. Right.
Hmm.
And I've gone through a lot of like big transitions in my life that have had a lot of unknowns. And when we don't have external proof in that new version of us, our new identity, or that new thing that we're going to do. Like when there's so much unknown, it's up to us to create proof of that for ourselves and then
Hmm.
also rise to the occasion, trusting that we are the ones that brought ourselves to the edge of that new thing or that new identity. And the trust that we build in bringing ourselves up to that point, no one else brought us there. We're the ones that have arrived at desiring that new identity, that new business, that new venture, whatever it may be. And the fact that you have arrived there is proof enough that you're
Hmm.
ready to go after it. And then it's like, okay, how do I actually cross the gap to get through the unknown, right? And that's where coaching is so helpful. Um, but yeah, I fully resonate with you. You are coaching the person that they are about to be, that they really want to be because they've brought themselves there. And
Hmm.
now it's time to jump, and it can be a scary thing.
No, it is, and that's oftentimes why people don't change.
Oh my God.
Because if you look to the future self that you're gonna become, and you look around, you see nobody supporting that person yet. So it makes you afraid to go there because why would I go there when that place is empty? No one is there cheering me on. They're
Mhm.
cheering on the current version right now because everybody comfortable with this guy right here. But if I
Yep.
transform it to somebody else, like who's gonna be there to cheer me on so I can grow into that new person, so I can
Mhm.
elevate that person with some because you gotta go to those stages that new version gotta chase that status because
Yep.
you need status. So you gotta chase that being somebody that's more valuable and make an impact, right? You gotta build that person through all those phases you gotta go through and be back again. And sometimes that's scary. Like, I mean, I don't see nobody support me
Mhm.
when I get there, so I'm not gonna go there. I'm gonna stay here.
I know. I'm totally with you. And one of the things that I talk about all the time is how important it is to have a long-term mindset. Because if you expect that as soon as you take a leap or as soon as you jump into that new thing, that new identity, that it's just going to be a beautiful meadow of vibrant flowers, and sometimes it is,
Mm,
but that's sometimes what we have to build to. And that's why it's so dangerous, especially in the world of like quick dopamine hits and like quick wins and chasing these different milestones. We're left so unsatisfied when we do make big leaps into the unknown because it's like, okay, boom, we land, but we never actually land because
mm,
we're expecting something to happen so fast. We're expecting all those people to be there, but it's like, okay, they may be there, but if they're not, can I still hold myself in this place where I get to move forward based on moving from my heart and from my soul to make the community there for me,
mm,
to make the meadow like lush and vibrant? It's not about, like, in my perspective, always those things being there for us when we land. It's about being the person that creates them and finds the people to help create them when we do land.
mm. So if I had to visit your history,
Mhm.
your own story, what I call your intellectual property, the past that you've created, and you got to tell us how you got here today and what some of the fears that you've experienced that you're like, man, that taught me a lot about myself. Where we to start with it?
Hmm. How much time do I
We
have?
got we got up to the top of the hour, yeah.
So I think the most appropriate way to package this is by starting when I was like 14 or 15. So you guys have a little bit of backstory. I was in the troubled teen industry from ages 14 and a half to about 17. And for those of you that don't know what that is, essentially, I was in a wilderness therapy program and then I was sent off to a therapeutic boarding school, quote unquote, because I was very rebellious, very defiant, and I just really needed to be doing things my own way, but I wasn't allowed to, right? As many of us are as teenagers, we have that rebellious nature, but it's not channeled in a healthy way. So I've always had that vein in me, right? The rebellion. And it wasn't until the last couple years that I've kind of transformed that rebellion into a healthy bravery. I know one of the things that this podcast episode is about is like the fears that I've overcome. And I think one of my biggest driving fears is that I don't want to live a life that I didn't choose.
Mm,
And if I were to always go by the status quo of what was safe, what was right for me, go get the job with the 401k and, be with this person, don't be with this person, live here or not here, all these things, then I wouldn't be here where I was today. And where that starts is really in 2018. So I went through my rough teenage years, and in 2018 I was probably 24. Yeah, I'm 29 now. And that's when I had my first like spiritual awakening. It was after a breakup. And I was like, "Oh my God, like I don't even know who I am anymore. Who even am I without another person?" And I had just found fitness, so like I had that, but I was like, there's got to be something more. Someone please tell me there's got to be something more. So I got really deep into meditation, and that really started my spiritual awakening and my personal development journey, however you want to call it. And from there, I got into the fitness industry, which was very uncomfortable for me, but it felt very aligned because I was working, waitressing jobs, and I did sales at a car dealership while I was studying to get my business degree. And I was like, I cannot see myself working in an office with no windows. I cannot see myself, like, at one point in time when I was 22, I was like, I'm going to learn Mandarin so I can go into tech sales in China. Like, thank God I didn't do that. I would be very obsolete, right? And like very unaligned. So I went through like all these different phases, right? And I found fitness, and I worked at a corporate like group fitness studio for 2 years. And then my journey of entrepreneurship and of really sharing my gift starts in 2020 when I went to go visit my boyfriend at the time, my now husband, Jason, in California. He was on a road trip in March of 2020. And on the way back, I got a phone call in the Fort Lauderdale airport that I was being laid off from my job.
Mm.
And I have a panic attack in the airport. Naturally, as someone who has $3,000 to her name and rent is due next week, I was like, WTF. I don't know
Mm.
what to do here. And Jason looks at me and he says, "This is the best thing that could have ever happened to you." And in that moment, through the tears streaming down my face, I was like, I felt a yes in my stomach and like panic up here. And that was really the first time that I felt this like deep acknowledgement and conviction in my body.
Mm.
And that's kind of what led me on my journey over the last 4 years since then. So I started a fitness company. It was an outdoor group fitness company from the beginning of 2020 to when I sold it last fall. And this was an incredible journey of trial and error, of entrepreneurship, of community. Like the community that we were able to build there was so incredible. And it also showed me that the impact that I want to have in this world is so much deeper than just the physical body. So I got this download in a meditation that I was in December of 2022, 2021. And all the download was Brenna, it's time for you to start sharing your gifts. And I'm
Mhm.
like, what does that mean? And let me preface this by saying my spiritual and personal development journey at this time was like very mainstream manifestation methods. Like I was fully in the like crystal buying phase, like writing down my manifestations, like that rite of passage that we all go through. I know you know what I'm talking about. We've all been there. If
Mm.
you haven't yet, you're about to be. So I was there and I was like, okay. So I decided to host a New Year manifestation workshop for anyone in my fitness company that was interested in that kind of stuff. And I hosted at my house. We had this cute little outdoor area. And the whole time, Asher, I was shaking in my boots
Mm.
with nerves. I like my hands were so clammy and like I'm not a big sweater, but like my hands were so clammy. I was so nervous, but I was having so much fun and I felt like I was being moved by something greater. So I followed that. And I remember in the middle of that workshop, while they were in a meditation, I walked inside to Jason and I said, I'm freaking out. Like, I don't know if I can do this.
Mm.
And he helped me through that. Like I went back out and it was great. And then I ended up doing that on a consistent basis over the next year and a half, which then led to hosting weekend long retreats at our lake house. And then it actually led to my first coaching client who I didn't even know I was coaching. I was like, you're my friend and you're in a place where you could use some help. So I'm going to help you. And I'm so grateful for that relationship because that really taught me that the impact that I have with people when I really dedicate my time, my energy, my attention, my heart and soul to them is profound. And that gift started to grow. I became more and more drawn to what it would look like for me to do this like more. Like I had no idea what I was doing, but I was like, something's happening here. And then there was a shift. I hired my first coach in December of 2022. And when I started working with her, I told her, I was like, I want to start an online coaching business. Like, that's all I knew. I was like, I want to start
Mhm.
an online coaching business. I want to be able to work remote. Right. And as I started to put myself online just with like my thoughts and my beliefs and, what I was passionate about, there was some resistance that I met in my fitness company. And I think this is like one of my biggest fears came to a head that I'm sure many people can relate to who are creators or who are putting themselves out there. And that was people questioning my character.
Mm.
One of my biggest values is integrity. What you see is exactly what you get. And I always tell myself, I'm only going to make decisions that I'd be okay with being blasted on my Facebook wall for everyone to see. If I wouldn't stand behind what I said, I'm not going to say it. And I was showing up so authentically and so much integrity. And people were saying, Brenna's doing something dangerous by helping people like think about things other than working their 9 to 5 or encouraging people to think outside of the box that they put themselves in and like do these things. And I'm like, dangerous. what? Like these are people that have known me for a long time. And like what it was so hard, Asher, because I was putting myself out there more authentically than I ever had in my entire life. And I was being met with like gossip through the grapevine, like people canceling their memberships. I was like actively losing revenue for my fitness company as I became more authentic. I'm like, make it make sense, you know? So I really had all these moments of, am I doing the right thing? But I always knew that I was. And then like we experience many times in our life, there becomes a tipping point where you decide whether you're going to go all in on something or not. And I met that about this time last year. Something that's important to note for this story is my husband and I are currently in the process of building out a Sprinter van, fully converted Sprinter van to travel full time for about 2 years. Um, Alaska to Argentina, just seeing a lot of national parks, working from the road, more on that at a different time. But we were at a point in time where we needed to decide if we were going to continue with our fitness company or if we were going to go full time into coaching because the van was coming along and then something else happened. Our friend from our fitness company invited us to go to his wedding in Delhi, India. And
Mm.
I'm like, I haven't traveled a lot, like ever. And I'm like, we can't not go. Like we have to go to this, right? And then Jason's like, we had gotten engaged in 2022. He's like, well, if we go into this wedding in Delhi, like we can just take a plane and go get married in Bali. And now I'm
Mm.
like, okay, like, am I supposed to say no? But here's the thing, I couldn't run my fitness company being away for 3 weeks. Like it was
Mm.
not set up that way. Like I was very much like the head coach, you know, kept all the equipment at my place. So I had to make a big decision. Do I trust the unknown? And do I trust myself enough and trust my partner enough and trust us and what in my big vision enough to let the ship sail from what I spent my entire being building for the last 3.5 years? It was this moment of letting go of a community, of a purpose, of a very comfortable income, which I'm very grateful to have had, and going into something that was brand new. Like I
Mm.
had just signed my first coaching client that April, and this conversation was happening in August. So we sat on it for about 2 weeks, then we booked the tickets. And ever since then, being full time into coaching and, you know, helping to provide value in the way that I do and really connecting with people and now working on what that looks like as far as a van life community, I always come back to the most important thing is that I get to live a life that I chose. That
Mhm.
means you take the good, you take the bad, you take the ugly, you take the unknown, you take the hits to your confidence, you take everything that comes with living a life that doesn't have a package. Because I see every day what it looks like to live a life in a package, right? That one that is predetermined for you or that you sign on to. And my biggest fear, like I said, is not being able to choose my path. And for the beginning part of my journey, that was very much connected to a um how you say like a big brother rebellion, like I don't want to be involved in anything greater that's not for my purpose kind of thing without getting too much in the weeds. And now it's turned into bravery where it's I want to be brave enough and I choose to be brave enough to pave my own path with my partner and with the people that I'm impacting and that are impacting me because there's nothing juicier than being able to do that in partnership.
Wow. That was, I was listening, sometimes I believe the power of speaking from history or speaking from something that you've written down. And it sounds like you have really captured your story. Like you understand your story, you can actually share it. So I was recognizing the skill set you just demonstrated just now. Like a lot of people, they can only speak for like 2 minutes and they're like, I don't know what to say. And you have the ability to speak longer. It is a gift, my friend. And sometimes you have people that speak so long where it's like, I don't know where they're going with this. And you went through all of that. You just tell us back the purpose of, hey, I want to choose my life. Not I don't want somebody's choosing for me, and this is why, and this is my history. And I'm a firm believer. Your history, like I said earlier, is your intellectual property. You gotta own it. Like a lot of us are afraid to go buy back our intellectual property from our traumas because we're afraid to go back there. I'm saying, sound like you've went back there, look into your stuff, and like, that is mine. I'm taking it with me. I'm gonna turn that into something. So it is powerful to hear your story, by the way. Powerful to hear your story.
Thank you. And I appreciate your compliment about speaking. I don't even know how long I spoke for, but yeah, I'm just so passionate about, sharing the raw and the realness of it. You see people online, right? But
Mm-hmm.
you don't actually know their story or the challenging decisions that they had to make, the like
Mm-hmm.
mirror moments where they had to make that felt like life or death that have brought them to the place that they are. And yeah, it really has all been rooted in choosing it and always
Mm-hmm.
choosing.
Yeah, I am. By the way, I do. I'm a fan of that life, that nomad life, that on the road life, because that's my goal too.
Yeah.
Because after I retired from the military, I was like, okay, I'm gonna set up my entire business to be online, like straight online, so I can pack up and go. So
Hmm.
when I retired from the military, what I did was I kind of shrank down my life down to two suitcases. So right now, everything I have is completed in two suitcases. I've
That's
got
so badass.
I got rid of everything, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna rebuild, but not right now,
Hmm.
right? I'm gonna go ahead and go see the world some more, go process the rest of the planet, and then come back and figure out some ways to reside. My goal is to get to Africa eventually, but right now I'm building everything online. So I commend you as well for figure out, okay, you're gonna do your stuff on the road because that takes a lot of courage too, by the way.
Thank you. And that's
Mm.
so cool that you have a similar goal. I think we never can predict exactly how we're going to get there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's one thing that I learned is I thought I had no idea, like, how are we going to live in a van like this? It felt so far away. But one thing that I coach on a lot and that my husband coaches me on that and that I'm always thinking about is as long as you are making aligned decisions, then that's always what's going to bring you closer to your vision if you have your vision in mind. Everything else is noise. But if you continuously make those aligned decisions, the only option is that you get closer to what you're aiming for.
Okay, so then I'm gonna ask you this then, because with every vision comes an obstacle.
Uh-huh.
So the vision of you and your husband getting on the road, what are some of the big obstacles that you're noticing right now that are like, hey, we're gonna put up some boundaries. What are some of those for you right now?
That's such a good question. And being on the road is like part of our big vision. I'll share the biggest piece of it after. But I think the thing that's going to be most challenging for me is nervous system regulation
Mm-hmm.
at border crossings
Mm.
because like I said in the beginning of my story, I come from the troubled teen industry. I'm mouthy. Like I've done a lot of work on it and I've come a long way. But like when it comes to someone telling me what to do without a good reason for telling me to do it, it's triggering. So I think for me, it's definitely that, right? It's what's going to happen when someone's trying to control me or like that situation and it doesn't make sense. How am I going to respond to that?
Mm.
So that's why I have hired a breathwork coach lately to work on that element of letting go of control. I think that would be one obstacle. I think another one is like seasons and weather and just getting into a rhythm. Like with anything, one of the main things that you would probably think would be like size, right? So the name of our van brand is 80 feet of freedom because we will
Mm-hmm.
be living within 80 feet. 80 square feet is how big the van is. So we've done a lot of downsizing. And like you said, you live in two suitcases. We've downsized everything to a 600 square foot house. So from a 2,400 square foot house. So like we're slowly making steps to overcome that obstacle of size. I think another one is it's really just the ones that I can predict right now are like the practical planning things. We have two dogs. One of them is a 90-pound German Shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what kind of obstacles are we going to run into? Being able to take them on hikes or at campsites, or what do they need to go into certain countries? And I think I do get nervous just going to South America because I've never been there before. My first experience with a very different culture and experiencing visceral culture shock was when I landed in Delhi. I was
Mm-hmm.
outside of my body for 3 days. Like I had no idea what was going on. Like I was irrecognizable. It was crazy. But I have been diligently taking Spanish lessons since December to like get back to fluency. I was almost fluent in college. So I think those would be the main obstacles with the big vision of the van. Um, Jason and I have always been diligent about working on our communication and approaching things as partners and as a team. So while some people may feel like it would be a challenge to be with their partner in 80 square feet a lot of times, him and I are actually very used to spending a lot of time together and intentional time together. And I'm excited for that.
Mm.
And I would say that would wrap up the main obstacles that are on my radar for the van life.
Wow. I might be able to help with one. Let me take a shot at it. From being in the military and traveling around, something I learned. It is more important to speak the culture than to speak the language. So
Mm,
oftentimes when you go to places, you're thinking, boy, I gotta learn the language. You gotta learn the culture first. Because trying to speak the language, you get away with it. But speaking the wrong culture to the people there, you would offend them. And they become
so
hostile. So you gotta
true.
learn to speak the culture more than you learn to speak the language. So if you can figure out
Lock
what that
that
culture
in.
is like, yes, you'll be able to get around because oftentimes people take offense to you disrespecting their culture more than take for you to fuck up their language.
Of course, it makes sense.
Yeah. So
Mm.
I would suggest work on that one.
No,
That saved me a lot when I was in the military running around stuff though.
I appreciate that golden nugget. Yeah, I'm working with two Spanish tutors right now who both live in Mexico City, and I plan to like work with a couple different tutors who are native to different areas. There's an awesome website called Preply, by the
Mm,
way, which is where I take my lessons. They're amazing. And I think as we're about to travel, asking them about culture is something I may or may not have thought of. So I'm
mm,
really grateful that we had this conversation.
hmm. Okay, of course. Whatever I can do to support your journey, my
Thank you. Thank
friend.
you.
So, okay. So you talk about the big fear of those obstacles. Now, what do you expect, by the way, you and your husband? What kind of transformation you guys are looking for on this journey? What do you think this entire experience of being on the road for 2 years, what transformation piece of it that you're trying to convert into?
For me personally, I want to learn how to frolic through life like he does. My husband is the
Mhm.
most grounded yet free-spirited man that I've ever met with such a big vision and such a big drive for impact. And I think I grew up in a very practical and logical household and in a partnership where someone is very like can make logical decisions when needed, but I stare on the like frantic logical like side of
Mhm.
things. That's how I was raised. So I've been doing a lot of work to like separate from that. So I'm hoping that our biggest transformation that we experience as a couple throughout this journey is being able to look at every single thing from the lens of partnership and alignment and values rather than letting a surface level thing like as we call pebbles, like seeing pebbles as a boulder and allowing that to drive something between us in that moment. Um, I think another transformation that we're hoping for is just truly falling in love with the journey, because that's something that I coach my clients on all the time, like how the journey is so much more important than the outcome. And the way that you get to the outcome that you want is
Mm,
by enjoying every step along the journey. And I think for us to go on a physical and tangible journey and emotional, um, mental and spiritual journey at the same time, it'll really help me embody that lesson for myself of rooting into the journey, enjoying it for like the dips and the highs and lows and the good and bad, and linking arms and sticking together through all parts of that the whole time. One of main things that the main reason why we're doing this
mm,
is because couple reasons. So I want to preface this by saying we're not running away from anything. We have an incredible life here. And we're so grateful. We're so blessed with everything that we have, and there's nothing to run away from. But there's also, in my opinion, like what's next? You know, if we're living in a house and we have dogs, like and like what are we supposed to do? Like then have a kid? Like I don't even know if I want that yet. Like what is there what to do next? So why not see everything? Why not literally see everything? Because isn't that what we're here to do as humans? See everything, have a really freaking good time, and make an impact. And those are all things that we can do from the road, seeing everything instead of a house sitting in North Carolina. So why not? Why not?
I'll give you a clap. No, this is powerful because I wish I wish more Americans think this way, by the way. Now, I'm an immigrant. I wasn't born and raised in this country. I came here. I was born and raised in Jamaica. Got here when I was 18, 19, almost 19. Joined the military, did 22 years in the military, retired from it. But I
Wow.
recognize the power of moving around, power of
Hmm.
seeing the world, because you cannot get that kind of education sitting on the couch
Yeah.
or going from your home to your workspace to your grocery store to your little mall and back. Like you don't get that kind of education. You gotta go there because oftentimes what I notice with a lot of Americans, by the way, is is we mostly see people come here, but you don't experience the experience of going somewhere else and people welcome you. Because if that happens to you and you enjoy, you see how people welcome you, you would have a different kind of welcome when people come to your location, your locale.
Hmm.
If we have that experience, like, oh my God, I cannot treat the person that come visit me because when I visit somebody else, I will want the same kind of treatment. So let's imagine you go to another place and people treat you hostile, right? Then you don't want to go anywhere. So it's something that I wish a lot of people like you're saying right now, you're gonna go anywhere you want to experience more. What next? Like I got to go see other people culture because it's
Hmm.
important to speak to other cultures because that gives you a lot of viewpoint in life. And oftentimes people missing that. They only got that one-sidedness and they don't see the rest of the world. Like the world is big, man. There's so
Hmm.
much out there. So I commend you for like, hey, we gonna go see it. We're gonna put a down payment on that.
Oh
We're gonna
yeah.
enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said about, welcoming and the energy in which you explore. I think that's
Hmm.
something so cool, and the energy in which you receive exploration and adventure, and you give that back. And operating from a place of curiosity rather than judgment in every place you
Hmm.
go, I think is
Hmm.
going to be so, so important. And especially after my experience in India, like where I was just a fish out of water. Like I didn't have my phone. Like I couldn't breathe the air. Like the air quality was not what I was used to. I just been on a plane for like over 30 hours and I was out of my body for 2 straight days. But then I noticed that I was like, okay, I actually don't have anything to fear. Like everyone here seems really nice. Like people are like accommodating. I was like, okay. So I think putting ourselves in those uncomfortable scenarios where we can't latch our identity onto our external surroundings, we're forced to go within. And
Hmm.
that's another big transformation that I'm excited for on this journey because, we identify what we're around. I live in this area. These are the things that I do. I have two dogs. This is the work that I do. But, like, okay, but who are you really? And that's
Hmm.
what I want to find.
So who are you?
I think I have no idea. I have no idea who my ego thinks that I am. But I know that I am here to live joyfully, to create a space for other people to live joyfully, and to have the time of my life doing it. Because what else are we here to do? I have always felt this fire within that I was meant for something far greater than I can comprehend. And in a world where we're encouraged to think so much and be in like all upper chakras, right? All heady stuff. It's like, well, who do you think you are? I was like, I have no idea who I think I am, but I feel who I want to be. And I feel who I am once my thinking brain gets out of the way. And that's who I try my best to show up as every single day. And I get it wrong many, many times. And at the same time, I think that's what welcoming the adventure is.
Hmm.
Welcoming the adventure of finding who I am. I mean, I could tell you that, I'm more self-aware than I was, or I'm more emotionally intelligent than I was, but even still, that's comparing. So I think it's a constant journey that we get to go about joyfully of finding out who we are.
Maybe I can shine some light on that question.
Be my
If you
guest.
if you okay, cool. So you answer that question very honestly, and the answer you give just now, in my personal view, is the truth. When I ask you who are you, you say you don't know. Actually, that is the most truthful answer ever. And here's why I think that. Um, how I see myself, right? You can never define who you are. I would say this question: you will never know who you are. That's one of my founding principles. You never know who you are. You could only know what you have, right? What you have is your body, your mind, so on and so on. But who you are, you will never know. And here's why. If you know something, that means it's limited, right? So if you know who you are, that means you're limited as well, and you're not limited. So therefore, you will never know who you are. You're undefined, which means you can be anything. you can do anything. So if you see yourself as somebody that's unknown, that's undefined, then that's who you are. So it's like the same question, right? If God know who God is, then God is also limited, right?
Mhm.
It's even deeper. It's even deeper one. So God itself is undefined, just like you are. You're undefined, which means you can do anything. You can be anything. So now, what do you want to become? You get to choose that. But who you are, there's no definition for it. So
Mm.
if you can say you are this, then tomorrow you might say you're something else. So that question is never going to be answered. You can relate to your history, your tradition, so forth and so on. That is what you have. But who you are is spiritual, and the spirituality piece cannot be defined. So that was my the answer I discovered after I was looking at myself and trying to figure out that answer that question. What am I? I'm like, no wonder nobody ever answered that question
Mm.
because it's an undefined answer. And if you give it a definition, then it's only limited. And tomorrow it's gonna change.
So
So
true.
then, yeah,
I love that perspective that you shared. Thank you. I
you're
agree.
welcome.
Putting definition to anything gives it a beginning and an end.
Hmm.
But if we don't define it, there's freedom in that lack of definition, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And freedom is what is like one of my core values, like what I'm all about. And, coming back to my biggest fear of living a life that I don't get to choose, living a life that I do choose is freedom because it means like I get to choose dot 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 anything. Like
Hmm.
it's just continuous, it's limitless. And I think getting to the place of limitlessness in our identity is the most petrifying thing for our ego
Mm-hmm.
because our ego doesn't like the unknown. It doesn't like question marks, but befriending the question marks and seeing them as opportunities instead has been something that's been really powerful on my journey of not knowing who I am.
Yeah, and you get to be an expert at what you have.
Hmm.
And those skills that you develop along the way, you get to use those and be useful to somebody else. And that's the thing that, like when you're coaching right now, right? You have skills that are useful. And the thing about people looking for things that are useful, because if you are of a certain amount of skill set and it's useless to everybody, then how do you feel about yourself?
Mm.
So when your skill set become useful, that's when you have an impact. So like you're going to see the world, you want to go experience different kind of reality because you want to put your skill set to the test to see how useful you are to the rest of the world. And
Mm.
oftentimes we all went through that. I went through that in the military. I was like, one of my biggest disconnect is like after I left the military from a place where you have this awesome mission where you was doing so much to impact so many, and then you stop doing it. You're like, okay, what next?
Yeah.
Same thing like when those folks went to the moon and came back, they was like, I want to see all this stuff, but then what's next? Right? We gotta figure out how useful you are in other capacity. So now you're like, oh, I went to college, went to all these things, but I feel like my skill set needs more usefulness to other people. So I need to go find those people to be useful to them. And then you feel like you have an impact on life.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. That brings up an interesting question. The people that desire to increase their skill set for
Mm,
impact
mm,
versus the people that desire to fine tune a skill set that they think they need in order to have an outcome. Do you think that is the crossroads between the people that go on to self-discovery and the people that don't?
mm. Impact, self-discovery. I think I'm gonna go back to motivation then because the best way for me to answer that question is it comes back to like the why piece.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why is an acronym for me when I think about it. It stands for what hurts you, what helps you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about the thing that motivates you to go on this road, on this trip, to have an impact, like what is that motivation? Is it on the side of what hurts you, on the side of what helped you? Like so when you think about your skill set usefulness, it might be a skill set that you use to help yourself, that you figure out, oh, can I use the same skill set to help somebody else? Or it could be an experience you had that hurt you. Like I gotta make people aware of this situation that hurt me. So I gotta ring the alarm. I gotta sound the awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm thinking about your question, that's what comes to mind for me as far as the hurt you part, the help you part, the skill set comes into play with what you found that helped you that you specialize in. You can add value, from that, or what hurt you gotta make people aware of it. If that make any sense.
It does. It does. What helps you, what hurts you. I
Hmm.
like that.
A lot of time our why is born from those two places.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So if I ask you like your deep why, what helps you or hurts you, what was that thing that your purpose was born from? What would you say that is?
What helps me?
Like from your experience, from your history, something that motivated you to want to do what you're doing right now. Was
Mhm.
it something that born from a pain you felt or from a skill set you've noticed that helped you out of something?
I think it was both.
Mm.
I think it started with pain. It
Mm.
started with me trying to be forced into all these boxes that weren't mine and not being allowed to explore anything that was risky and thinking that, I had to live this logical square life when that wasn't
Mm.
me. Like I was never that. I was always the black sheep. And from that place, I was like throwing my hands up in the air like there's got to be something different. And what I found helped me from that place was vulnerability, was
Mhm.
authenticity, even when I didn't know what those things were, I knew that that's what I was doing. It was sharing stories. It was helping people even when I was felt like I was in the pits of hell. Like I remember when I was about to be sent away to the wood to my wilderness program, I
Mm.
had an advice blog on Tumblr. Do you remember Tumblr? I was I was a 15-year-old or 14-year-old like giving like relationship advice to middle schoolers. And I found this
You was
Tumblr.
practicing.
I was practicing. I feel like I was I this has been in my like path for however long, and I got
Hmm.
a glimpse of it right before I got into a lot of trouble. And then, I had to go on that painful journey of, finding myself within a system. And I was in a system in boarding school where, you had to be a certain way or else you got suspended. Like you had to
Hmm.
be a certain way or else you got punished by chores. You had to be a certain way or else this happened. And I saw so many people thrive in that, and also so many people like the complete opposite of thrive in that kind of scenario. And I was one of those people. So then that kind of showed me at that time, I still thought that it was my problem that I couldn't fit into a system, right?
Mm.
But over time, I learned that my unique way of thinking, the conversations I would have with friends in my late teens, early 20s, how I would help them when they were going through things, I was always the person that people would come to. That helped me find purpose. You
Mm.
know, it allowed me to be completely outside of myself. Like not like taking myself out of the center of the universe, even if I was experiencing something horrific, to be able to show up for someone else and help raise them up, like that gave me light to move forward. So what helped me was sharing the light with the people that I saw the light in and reflecting that back to them. And what hurt me is thinking that I had to be a certain way, which is why now I'm so passionate about helping those creative entrepreneur, like artist people realize that their way is the way and it gets to be safer than it ever was. So I think that's my why.
Mm. All right, I'm gonna share this. I'm gonna see if I can diagnose you. Is that okay?
I'm
No, I'm just
all
kidding.
here
I'm
for
just
it.
kidding. But I recognize something in you very similar. Is like I needed when I was growing up, I needed the freedom to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Because when I get in trouble, it's when I get creative. And when I'm in that space of trouble, I can find a way to organize the chaos.
Mm-hmm.
But I need to be in the chaos. You put me in a place that was too organized, too restrictive. My creativity gets suppressed. So
Mm-hmm.
I need to be around a little bit of chaos, and I need to get in trouble, and then I'm turned on. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling that you have that same kind of creativity where
Totally.
like you gotta put yourself in a little bit of risk, a little bit of trouble, and then your brain start working, and you can find solution because some people are meant to like you put up somebody in a very organized formation, like a very groomed garden. And it was like, oh yeah, it's beautiful here. But somebody like, man, I need to see the wilderness because in the wilderness, I can turn this into something beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got a different kind of brain. So I'm assuming that maybe you love the wilderness, the freedom to get in trouble, so you can organize chaos.
Oh. Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I love the wilderness. I love being out in nature. Even when I was in the wilderness program, I loved being outside, being dirty, like not knowing what time it was. Like I loved all that. And organizing the chaos and having the freedom to do that. Yeah, I mean, I don't want like clean cut and cute like or like living in a I mean literally a house is a box, bro. Like literally we are like in a box right now, and it's just so crazy how we expect for our creativity to thrive when
Mm-hmm.
we are in the thing that we don't want to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And having wide open space, and I love how you reframed like those obstacles and fears that I predicted about being the van as being chaos that I get to creatively like grow from, because that totally like changes the perspective, right? Of like, oh, these are actually juicy opportunities that I could birth something real freaking cool out of.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the deep desire in most of in some of our hearts that are have that courage to go out and see the unknown and do things that people are like, nah, I'm afraid. I'm gonna go
Mm-hmm.
see it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we gotta wrap up. Oh my God, I can talk to you for a long time there, Brenna. You have an interesting mind, by the way.
Thank
Definitely. I
you.
like this. We had a really good idea tennis moment over the last couple of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if somebody heard you right now, like, yo, Brenna, what's up, homie? You're my hero. How can I connect with you? How can I do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So while we're in the process of building our big brand, my husband and I, the best way to reach out to me is through Instagram. My Instagram is I am Brenna Dragos, which I'm sure will be linked in the show notes, or through my email, brennacoachingco@gmail.com.
Perfect. So this episode is going live on YouTube and then also Facebook and LinkedIn, but also I'm playing catch up right now. So all that information won't be put into all that stuff till later on. But if they catch it live, then they can actually listen to your stuff and just kind of reach out to you and connect. Now,
Great.
if you had a wrap up for us and share your biggest takeaway or giveaway from this conversation, what would that be?
The thing that is most fresh for me is the creativity that can be birthed from chaos will be far more powerful than anything that you can come up with logically. You have to be activated in some kind of way in order to have those biggest bursts of creativity, whether it is activated by chaos or activated by something else that brings out truth within you. So long as you're activated by truth, the creative stream will always flow.
Hmm. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
activating that awareness into the minds of those that are listening to us. And I gotta say, by the way, I'm listening to you. You are very outspoken. I don't know if you noticed that. I'm a fellow Toastmaster too, so I do keep an eye on people that are like to speak and like to speak. And you're a very good speaker, by the way. I don't know if anybody tell you that. You're a very good
Thank
speaker.
you. Thank you.
Yes.
I bought this microphone. My husband bought this microphone for me in March, and I've been telling myself to sit down and start my podcast, sit down and start my podcast. And I love speaking, and one of my biggest goals is to be on stage for the people. And I've had the vision. I'm wearing the purple blazer. That's all
Mm,
I know. Just
mm,
like in that meditation where it's like just share your gift. It's like purple blazer on the stage, all these people, everything else is dark. But it's been really hard for me to like hit record and press play because I feel like it's a challenge to not be I love the I love the conversation, and and I love that's like idea tennis, like you
mm-hmm.
said. Um that being said, I very much appreciate your compliment.
You're welcome. Yes, you can work on your speaking however you want to work on it. But so you see,
Mhm.
you haven't started a podcast yet?
No.
Okay. Uh, okay. Yeah, definitely. Whenever time you're ready, you can do it. It's a lot of work, but depends on what you want to talk about. You gotta figure that out.
Hmm.
I kind of I'm gonna share this right now. So this is what I did for my podcast, and it helps me to take the pressure off myself because at first I was trying to figure out I'm gonna base it on this. I'm gonna find people to talk about this stuff and so on. Have you written any book yet? By the way, what's the accent? Have you written any books yet?
No.
Okay, so I figured out a way to take the pressure off myself. So I look at some of these big emotions that I want to build a theme around. So like the five themes that I build around, like first time experiences, the failure, the fears, the dreams, and the victories. And oftentimes to get the what I do, I build the context and let the people provide the content.
Mm-hmm.
So when they popped on, it's pressures on them to share the story. This is the context. They pick a theme, we talk about the theme. And you just kind of build your storyline around the theme, and then from there you can figure out, okay, who want to talk about this topic today? Because you want to get stories from those topics because everybody have a different experience with those themes. And then from there we get just have a conversation. And
Mm-hmm.
it makes it a lot more easy and authentic to kind of share. So you kind of think about what is it that you want to work on, that you want to have a conversation about and figure out maybe a couple of themes from that. And you just work on those big emotion that shows up in that space. Because like this podcast is about emotions. It's a big emotional podcast. Because you talk about fear, it's gonna be emotional.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get to figure out what people want to talk about. And now people are free to put the context in your container, in your
I love
content.
that. Yeah, great. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. And with that, folks, you're tuned into Pandora's Awareness Podcast, a place where we collect stories and circulate life-changing wisdom. And today, Brenna shared today. I enjoy listening to your story, listen to your history, listen to how you get here. And that was very powerful to know. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
With that, folks, make it an awesome week.